welcome back to my channel. I'm Erica and I appreciate you being here. Today we're going to go over all of the books that I read in the month of August. August was actually a really good month of reading for me. I might not have gotten through like a ton of books, but the ones that I did read, I really liked. Everything was a 4-star book except one book, which was 3 stars, which for me means I didn't think it was terrible. So I feel like we're doing pretty good. I really don't want to spend time reading books I don't like, you know what I mean? So just like always, I'm gonna start with the book that I liked the least, and then I'll end with the book that I liked the best, and then just some little notes on what's gonna be upcoming on my channel in the next month or so. I'll chat about that for a few minutes after we go through these book reviews. Yeah, so unfortunately my 3-star book is this guy. This is American Nations by Colin Woodard. I previously read a different book by this author, The Republic of Pirates, and I really enjoyed that one, and not just because I really enjoy pirates, but because I thought that the way that this author told the story of the history of the Caribbean pirates, I thought it was great. This book, I think the fault lies in it was just such a broad subject to attempt to write a book about, and I just don't think that this was a long enough book to successfully get through it. It felt we were jumping all over the place too much for me. I didn't care for it. I didn't feel like we spent enough time on each thing. And I mean, I can't really blame him. There's a lot of ground to cover here. The basic premise of this book, it's a nonfiction, and this author is attempting to explain the different regions in North America and how we all came to be the way that we are right now culturally. So it starts hundreds of years ago, even, before like Canada or the US or Mexico existed, and he goes through these hundreds of years to explain how the different regional cultures in North America developed. I think it's a really interesting premise because, as an American, it's very clear to me that we have a lot of regional cultural differences and the way that we approach things. And so I thought, hey, this is going to be like an interesting book that's going to explore maybe a little bit of why that is. And it did, but as I said, it just couldn't quite go into enough depth, I think, because we're talking hundreds of years of history, and this is only like a 300-page book. Like, this is tiny to do the scope of discussing like an entire continent. An entire continent and its people and how we got here over hundreds of years. I feel like this needed to be longer. I think it can be supplemented by other history books, other nonfiction, which I do have on my list, and of course I've read other nonfiction and historical nonfiction in the past as well. But I think this could maybe be a good starting point to give you an idea of where you might want to focus next onto a subject to get like more in depth. But it just didn't go as deep as I wanted it to. And I liked his pirate book. I just feel like with what this author seemed to want to accomplish and discuss and explore, we just couldn't quite get there. If this book had been maybe, I don't know, like 3 times as long, I feel like it could have been a lot better, because it just felt so rushed and we were jumping all over, and so I just couldn't get as invested in this as I did in his other book, unfortunately. Overall, I like the subjects that this author wants to write about, so I'm hoping that maybe his other book is going to be more focused on like one specific area. We might be better able to get where he wants to go, which unfortunately the scope here was just too vast, I think, for the size of this book. On to the 4-star books. The first 4-star book that I have, if you hear noise, that's my cat. She's very interested in what's going on in the backyard, so she's playing in the blinds right now. My first 4-star book is Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas. This is a book in the Throne of Glass series. I am slowly making my way through the series, and I'm doing a little vlog for each one that I go through, get my real-time thoughts on the story as I read through it. So this book, I thought it was a solid 4 stars, which I was relieved about, because this thing ain't small, and I don't want to read like, what is this, 600 pages? It's almost 700 pages. I don't want to read a huge book that I don't like. So I was glad that I really was able to get into this one. I can definitely tell over time that the author has been able to develop her writing skills First couple books in this series, man, those were rough, but this one was really enjoyable to go through. I thought that she had some really good ideas to she did some things that I wasn't expecting, but in a very good way. I was really not wanting our main character to just have everything like magically work out perfectly for her, and it didn't. Like, we start the story with our main character who's going back to like her homeland and doesn't exactly receive a warm welcome. And I was like, you know what? This is interesting because I'm not expecting that. I won't give you any spoilers here, of course. If you want spoilers, you can go check out my vlog series. I'll link the playlist down in the description if you want to see some of my thoughts. I give spoiler thoughts and non-spoiler thoughts in that video. Like, I have different sections. So anyway, for this video though, I will not give any spoilers. I thought the pacing was good in this. There was a lot of action going on throughout the entire thing. Not just like fighting, but we're jumping around to different viewpoints for events that are taking place in completely different locations. So I really liked that. It kept the story fresh the entire way through. We also got to do a lot more world exploring in this one, which we haven't really gotten to do much of in the other books. The other books we pretty much just stayed in like one spot, but this one we've got our team like going all over to like get these kind of steps in a quest done, which I like to see that. I like to see adventuring. So this was definitely a book that this one might actually be my favorite so far from the series. I just really enjoyed reading it, and I'm looking forward to reading the next one, even though the next one I think is kind of divisive. What is it? It's Tower of Dawn. It's my understanding it focuses on Chaol, and Chaol is like a divisive character in apparently the Throne of Glass fandom, so I like Chaol, but apparently a lot of people don't. So I'm definitely open to the entire next book like being about him and what he's been doing, because he wasn't in this book at all. So it's my understanding the next book is going to show what he's been doing while all this was going on. I'm really looking forward to that actually, and seeing what the author is able to do, showing a narrative like through an entire book that has nothing to do with our main character, Celaena. But overall, 4 stars. I'm almost done with the series. I have 2 books left. There's Tower of Dawn and then Kingdom of Ash. So 2 books left after this one. I'm really hoping that the final 2 books continue to be enjoyable like this, because man, the first few books in this series were rough to get through, and they only get bigger. I don't want to be reading books that are rough to get through, but this one and the one that I read before were very enjoyable, so I'm hoping the last 2 books in the series will continue the trend and I can rate those highly too. Another 4-star book, I read Lady Tan's Circle of Women by Lisa See. I did not expect to end up liking this book as much as I did. It really pulled me in. This author has a really excellent style to help you visualize exactly what's going on in the story, not just with the characters, with what they're doing, but like the environment that they're in. It was descriptive without being obnoxious, which like, for me, that I love that, because I can easily get annoyed when some authors they try to get too fancy with their descriptions, and I'm like, can we just please move on with this story? Like, I don't care. I don't care what you're describing right now. I can picture it well enough. Let's just move on. But the way this author did it with her book, I thought was so well done. It really helped me to like get actually sucked into the environment. And it really helped too that the bulk of what was going on takes place in just a couple of locations, like in homes, not actually out like in the world somewhere. So this story follows a young woman. She starts out as a girl. We start the book when she's a girl hundreds of years ago in China, and we follow her through to adulthood, through her different stages of life, focusing in each stage on like a significant event or series of events in that stage. She spends the first part of her childhood in her home with her parents, but then after her mother's death, she ends up going to live with her father's parents, so her grandparents. Her grandparents are both doctors, although because of the time it's taking place in and the cultural beliefs, they're different kinds of doctors. So male doctors can't like actually physically treat female patients, and female doctors are not really like respected. Imagine that. So what happens is like her grandparents have this medical clinic that they work, and they both use their specialties to treat their patients. It's primarily based on Chinese medicine, and so our main character ends up learning a lot of useful information about how to treat people from both of her grandparents. And because of the status of where she and her family are in society, she's not actually allowed to leave the house. Like the first time she leaves her home, I believe, is when her mother dies and she gets sent to live with her grandparents. I think is the first time she's ever left her house. And then once she's at her grandparents' house, once again, she's extremely restricted in what she can do. And then, of course, ultimately, we see in another phase of her life, she gets married, and then she's restricted to the home of her husband's family, where she's like under the boot of her mother-in-law, who's not a very pleasant lady. They kind of butt heads, even though our main character is doing her best to just kind of be submissive. But our main character wants to continue treating patients, and her mother-in-law is like, no, we're not going to be doing that. That's not cool. Apparently, it's not something that a lady in our main character's position should be doing. So our main character has to do it like kind of behind the scenes, quietly, treating, because it's like a massive household. So not only is it like her husband's main family, but there's like concubines and children of concubines. There's all these people, and all of the women, they learn that our main character has experience and knowledge to help them medically. So they start like quietly going to get medical treatment from the main character. So we see this over the years, how things play out in our main character's life, and the changes that she goes through, which I won't get into because there's many of them and they're spoilers, but that's the general course. We watch our main character as she struggles really to just live her life in such a constrained time in society. The limitations that are placed on her and the other women around her that are certainly not placed on the men that any of them know. But our main character does her best to stay true to herself and live her life in a way that like she can feel confident and proud of herself and also feel fulfilled. I thought this book was so well written, so interesting. I loved that all of like the primary characters in this book were women. There were certainly men in it, but they were minor supporting characters. It felt like even our main character's husband felt like this minor supporting character. The author really focused on the women in this story, which I thought was great. This author did such an excellent job in the visualization part of this and being able to immerse you in the environment. This is the first book that I've read by this author, but I understand she has a number of other books, so I'm definitely gonna put some of her other books on my TBR. I also read Witch King by Martha Wells. Of course, rated it 4 stars, and I have to say I was pleasantly surprised with how that turned out, because I'm not kidding, for like the first 40% of this book I didn't know what the fuck was going on, and I'm not exaggerating. The first 40% of this book I was like, I don't even know what's happening right now. I don't know who these people are. I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know where they're going. I don't even know what we're doing here. I have to give this author a round of applause. Okay, not literally, because like my hands are full and that would be kind of weird, but you know what? I should have trusted you, Martha Wells, okay, because you knew what you were doing. So good job. The first 40% of this was extremely confusing, because what she does is drop you into this story with like no explanation and almost no context for anything. So you kind of just have to like figure out what's going on eventually. But she's certainly there if you're looking for hand-holding, if you're looking for like exposition, you want an author that's going to just lay it out kindly for you and lead you into the story. You are not getting that here. Don't look here for that. What you get in this, so I was thinking about it, I'm like, man, you know what this is like? Okay, have you ever played like an RPG? Because if you have, then you're gonna understand what I'm gonna say this is like. So when you're playing an RPG, there's like the main storyline, right? But then there's side quests. This book is like being dropped into the very beginning of a side quest. and then just following that side quest, and when the side quest ends, the book ends. But what that means is you don't get any of like the setup information from the main storyline that you would have gotten if you'd started at the main storyline, but you didn't. You're starting at the start of a side quest. So that's how this works. That's why for most of I shouldn't say, for the first like 40%, I was like, I don't know what's going on. This author throws so many names of people, places, things, events at you, and gives you like no explanation at all. Just over time, you have to kind of like ultimately be paying attention, I guess, keeping track of these things a little bit, and it starts to make sense. I would say by the middle of this book, I felt finally like I wasn't just completely confused by every single thing that was going on. So it takes a while, but for me, it did ultimately end up connecting, and I thought it was really interesting. What the hell is this book actually about, since I just spent like, I don't know, the last 2 minutes explaining how I didn't understand the first part of this book. This book follows a demon, Kai, that's our main character, and his demon body is in the Underearth, but his like spirit, soul, consciousness, whatever, can possess mortal bodies, so like humans. So that's what we follow. We follow him above ground, possessing a human body, and we start where he's awoken from what seems to be a curse. Someone has cursed him to be held in kind of a stasis in his mortal body, and he doesn't remember why. Like, his memory of what happened to actually like lead up to the curse, he doesn't remember. He can remember certainly like everything else of his past, but not the actual like kidnapping and imprisoning and cursing part. So he and his companion, not his girlfriend, just his like adventuring companion, they both have to figure out what the hell happened, because she was also locked up. Now, she's a witch. He is the Witch King, but he's like a demon. So 2 different types of abilities, right? They do different things. So we see them go on this side quest to figure out what the hell happened to them, who imprisoned them, who cursed them, why, what is going on, what led up to it. And that's what we follow. That's a little side quest that we follow in this book. I have to say, it was really fast paced. I loved that there was a lot of adventuring around for, this is a relatively short book. This is like a 400-page book. There was a ton of adventuring around that we saw, which I thought was fun. I love when we don't just stay in one spot. This was like going all over with our characters, having to like follow clues to figure out what the hell happened to them. And they're also trying to find the other members of their adventuring group, because they have a method of communicating with each other, but their attempts are so far fruitless. Like, none of their adventuring companions are responding to the way that they would normally communicate with each other. So they're like, well, did those people get captured too? Like, are they even alive still? Like, don't know. So that's what we do. It was a very enjoyable story. I understand that this is a standalone, but I will say, because of the nature, like I said, I think describing this as following a side quest, I think it's a really perfect analogy now that I think about it. I think that we could absolutely, if Miss Martha Wells wanted to, like, she could write more books. She really built quite a rich world in just 400 pages with some really interesting characters and different magic systems happening. So for sure, with the way that this story goes, and like just how many people are involved in this, like how many different characters, how many different events are going on, she could absolutely write more books in this world if she wanted to. But like I said, it's my understanding at this point, this is a standalone. If you want an adventuring fantasy with some magic, and you don't mind just being dropped into the middle of something where you aren't gonna know what is going on for like, I don't know, 150 pages, you're probably gonna end up really liking this. If that's not your thing, if you're like, I can't deal with like 150 pages of really just being confused every single page about what is going on, then this book is probably gonna like make you mad. It's worth, I don't know, I would say it's worth a shot, because I think the payoff for me was really good. I genuinely didn't know how I was gonna rate this in the first 40% because I was like, am I stupid? Like, should I just DNF this? Because I literally don't know what is going on. But eventually you get there. She got me there, okay? This Martha Wells, she got me there. And I should have just trusted her that she knew what she was doing, because she really did. But I can absolutely understand, like, if you don't like that feeling where you're just like reading well over 100 pages and you still don't know what's going on, I can't blame you. That could be really frustrating. So this book might not be for you. But if you are the kind of person where you're like, you know what, I'm going to trust this author to get me where I need to go, then I would say give this a shot, especially since as of right now it's a standalone. It feels like we don't often get fantasy standalones anymore. All right, my final book for the month of August, also 4 stars, but also this means it's my favorite book that I read. Is anyone gonna be shocked? I don't think so. This is The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson, of course. It's the 3rd book in the first Mistborn series, Era 1, so it is the trilogy conclusion. And what a conclusion it was. I will not do spoilers here, of course, although I did talk spoilers. I made a dedicated video for this, which I will link below, doing a series where I'm reading through the Cosmere, and so this was book 3 on my list. This was such a satisfying wrap-up to this trilogy, and that's not to say that, like, everything was a happy ending, but it was a satisfying ending, and that's what I look for in a book. I feel like Mr. Sanderson here knows how to wrap things up. He knows how to give me the information that I want in order to feel like we didn't just kind of like throw confusing or convenient things into a story without addressing them. I felt like he addressed everything. All of my questions that I had that were important, I feel like were addressed in this. He's another author that I think does the shifting perspectives really well. I loved in this book that we were shifting around to different characters. I especially liked that a lot of the characters that we focused on in this book, that we were seeing from their perspective. In the first book of this trilogy, they were like side characters. One of them even was like super minor, that we barely got anything from them in the first book. But this one, they were a huge part of it. We were seeing a lot from their perspective, and there was a lot of development. I really like the characters that Sanderson chose to focus on to develop further in this one, especially because, like, my favorite character, Sazed, he got a ton of page time in this. Yes, this is my headcanon. This is how I pronounce his name, Sazed. I know. Please don't get mad that that's how I pronounce it. It's just my headcanon. It's just what I have to do. He's Sazed to me, and he got a lot of page time in this book, which I was very pleased about. I love seeing Sazed. One of the things that I really appreciated about this book as well was that a lot of our characters were making some really difficult choices. A lot of them struggling with, like, can they stick to their ideals? Or are they going to have to make some concessions? Are things really the way that they believed? Did they have like a completely unrealistic view of the way that the world is? That's what made so many of these characters relatable, to watch them go through the struggle that I think is so common. I don't know, should I say universal? I don't know. It's kind of a universal human experience, I think, as we mature, right? That we see that, like, sometimes we might have to do things, or things might be a certain way that we don't really want them to be, but it's just kind of the reality of the situation. So basically what I'm saying is, a lot of these characters, what they're struggling with, even though maybe I'm not necessarily struggling with the end of the world, although, I don't know, maybe sometimes, but even though it might be a little bit different, their experiences, their feelings are pretty relatable, I think, for most people. It's one of the things that I really enjoy about his books. He seems to be able to tap into some extremely common human experiences and feelings. I absolutely want to continue reading more. I am going to continue my Cosmere series. I'm following a reading list that's recommended on the Cosmere sub on Reddit. It's, of course, a Brandon Sanderson sub. And if you are also interested in reading Brandon Sanderson, I will try to remember to link the reading order lists down below in the description, because the sub is really helpful. They have several, like, reading orders that you can choose from if you're just not sure where to start. So I picked one. I believe it's the modified publication order. That's what I'm reading through. So I believe the next one is going to be The 11th Metal, and that's a short story. So I should have that up for sometime in September is currently my plan. That is all that I have read for August, but I do have a couple of notes for like what's going to be going on with my channel coming up here. So I do have plans to do some scary books. Well, I don't know. Are they going to be scary? They're going to be like Halloween-y type mood themes. Maybe not scary, but maybe. I love a good horror story. We'll see. They won't all be horror, probably. Although, I don't know. I've got some ideas of how I'm going to choose the books. I'll probably do like a short series on that. It's going to be starting later in the month of September. And so I will have more information on that for you, but I definitely get into like the seasonal themed reading, and so that is on my list. Not to worry though, not all of my reading is going to be like Halloween or scary themed, so like if you're not into that, no worries. That's not going to be all that I read for the next 2 months. I'm still going to be doing other stuff, and I'm going to try to keep like the Halloween themed stuff like confined to pretty much just those videos. So like if you're not into it, you won't have to be subjected to like a ton of Halloween stuff around here if you're not super into it. I'm also participating in the Reddit Fantasy Subs Bingo for this year. It started April 1st, goes through March 31st of next year, so we're almost at the halfway mark. So instead of doing an update right now on my bingo, I am going to be doing in just a few weeks, I'm going to do like a 6-month update, see where I'm at on my bingo card, because that way I've still got like 6 months still got 6 months to see how much of that card I can end up filling up. Now I just saw the Book of the Month Club books for the month of September, and I'm gonna end up skipping this month, I think, because it's just 4 out of 5 of them I'm like not interested in at all, and the one that I am interested in, which I think is The Stranger Upstairs, I'm not entirely sure if that's the title. I'll put the cover here so you can see which book I mean. This one is on my TBR, but I'm not confident that I'm gonna love it, and I don't want to spend the money to buy it, so it was actually already on my library, like my library wish list, so I'm gonna actually borrow it from the library instead of buying it, so I just skipped it this month instead. That's okay, because I definitely, like, I've got a ton of books to read. I have no shortage of books. What am I going to be reading for the month of September? Like, aside from some scary books going on that I need to get started, but I haven't chosen those yet. So there are going to be some like Halloween theme type books I'm going to read. I am also going to continue my, I almost call it my Game of Thrones. No, my Throne of Glass series with Tower of Dawn. So I'll be working my way through this giant tome of a book. And then speaking of giant bricks of a book, I got this Napoleon biography that's like, it's almost 1,000 pages. What is this? Okay, so if you don't count like the notes or the bibliography, this is like a little over 800 pages, which that's what I'm gonna go with, because being like I'm gonna read almost 1,000-page book feels daunting. Saying that I'm gonna read like an 800 something page book feels more reasonable somehow. Is it? I don't know. It's the mental games that we play with ourselves, right? So I'm going to be reading this one. I am not entirely confident I'm going to be done with it by the end of September, but I'm at least going to start on it this month, because I do want to have it done by the time the Napoleon movie comes out. I think it's coming out in November, right? So I would like to have this done before I go to see that. So this is going to be my nonfiction priority for the next couple of months. And then, of course, reading the short story, The 11th Metal by Brandon Sanderson. That'll be the next on my list. I do have it, actually, I think it's behind me. Yep, I do have it here in this very nice, I know, I'm trying to get the light to not shine on it. But here is my angle. We'll just both sit like this, okay? I think this is the UK edition of this book. I got it because I liked it better than the US edition. So if you're interested, just search for the UK edition of Arcanum Unbounded, and I believe that the 11th Metal is in this one. So I'm not going to read, because I'm following that reading order, I'm not going to read this entire book at once. I'm only going to be reading that one short story, and then throughout the reading order that I'm following, it will have me go back to this book from time to time to read more short stories, you know, as the reading list goes on. but I'm not reading this whole thing at once, just the 11th Metal. And then I also have a couple of books that I think are coming up available from the library, but we'll see. We'll see if I have time for those. As of right now, the weather where I am is still absolutely gorgeous because it's still summer, but as the weather starts to get cooler and I start to hibernate for the winter and hunker down and be a total cliche with all of my pumpkin stuff and wrapped up in a blanket and drinking like tea or hot chocolate and reading a book, because God, I can't tell you what a cliche I am when it comes to things like that. That winter is coming, okay? And not just this, but like actual winter is coming. The time for hunkering down and indoor activities will soon be upon us. The last few weeks of summer here, I've still got like some outdoor concert stuff to go to. I've got like outdoor plans with friends. I'm gonna try to live it up until we're all hiding in our houses for like 4 to 6 months. So, you know, it's what you gotta do. That is all that I have for you for this wrap up. What did you think of any of the books that I talked about? Have you read any of them? Do you plan to read any of them? Let me know. Let me know what your thoughts are. And I'm just really looking forward to the upcoming fall reading season. So let me know if you have any plans for what you're gonna read, like as the weather turns to fall, at least from my Northern Hemisphere people. I know my Southern Hemisphere my people down in the Southern Hemisphere, we're all switched around. So let me know if you've got like spring reading plans. Why not? Give me a head start for my spring next year. Let me know. Anyway, that's all that I got today. I always appreciate you coming by. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content like this. And I'll see you next time. Thanks.